and it's Carter Hart. And Alain Vigneault confirmed a couple days ago that he's going to be a healthy scratch for the next 2 games, and they've already played one.
That was a thrilling one, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yesterday or last night on Insider Trading, they were talking about Philadelphia contemplating bringing in a goaltender to give Carter Hart a reset in a way. I mean, there's an obvious candidate here. If there's a guy, it's got to be Jonathan Bernier, right?
I think so. Like the Flyers, they're not shy to spend money. That Bernier, he might get his cap. But there might be a bit of rent tension there from the Red Wings. But for me, honestly, I'm not too shocked in a way. I'm not saying Carter Hart's a bad goalie. I think he's an amazing goalie. But, based on his age and the amount of games he's already played at this point, that it's just this is going to happen, that, there's going to be a lot of bad games like this because honestly, like goalies don't emerge this quickly.
Right.
They usually don't. Like even if you look at Carey Price, he didn't become a full-time starter until he was like 22, 23. They still had Cristobal Huet, the splitting games with him. Or even if I look at like further back, Marc-Andre Fleury, he came in as an 18-year-old in the NHL, but they realized this is not an environment, or you're not playing in a way that we need you to play. Let's get a reset. Let's send you back to the World Juniors. Let's set you back to the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles. And it's always happened like that. Like even, later in his career, when I think about it, and he's still kind of young, when he was struggling, you bring in a Thomas Vokoun. So it's something when I think about young goalies, because again, like their development is so much more different than other players, that I feel for the guy, but I don't think it's a sign of he's a bad goalie now. It's just, it's part of the development process for Carter Hart.
And I know obviously we're looking at this with hindsight. Do you think they made a mistake in just kind of handing him the starting position last season? Do you think it might have been better for him if they went out and had a 1B type goalie?
I think, yeah, it was kind of a bit of a rush there. Again, like given his age, given where he was drafted as well, I think the Flyers kind of really ran with it. Like, they really hit on that second round pick and they ran with it. Because when you look at their history of goaltenders, even if, like you'll have the Robert Escher, the Roman Cechmanek, they were good for like a year. But if you really look back on it, like they haven't had a consistent guy in net since Ron Hextall.
Right.
So I think they jumped the gun there.
And speaking of Ron Hextall, remember I don't know if it was the main reason he got fired, but it was one of the things that they butted heads on, was bringing Carter Hart up. And Ron Hextall was of the opinion that, hey, no, he's not ready yet. Keep him down there a little bit longer. And I don't know if he's necessarily right. Yeah. I think he is. I think at the time he was NHL ready, but I don't know if him playing the majority of the games necessarily helped him.
Yeah, I completely agree. Where, who better to kind of assess that than, literally your franchise goalie, like the guy that you had your winning years with in Ron Hextall, someone who's a cornerstone guy that he kind of knows, like, yeah, wait a minute, I could see a few things that, probably you can't. I'm not saying anything, but I think he was probably the one guy in that management team that played goalie in the NHL. And I agree too. Like he's it's such a weird thing, because when I think now you look at what we just talked about with Thatcher Demko, where, great on them. They really gave him the patience he needed to develop, and he's been able to kind of, roll with a team that, gives up a lot of shots on him. But that's the thing; he's further along in the development, and they let him play in the NCAA. But with Carter Hart, it just again, I've seen it before, and I'm not saying that this is one of the main reasons, but the whole World Junior gloss over it. I'm not going to use Justin Pogge as an example. I'm going to use like Steve Mason. He came in, he won the World Juniors. He also won with Jonathan Bernier. That was a fun fact there. And when he finally arrived in Columbus, he won the Calder Trophy, and that was his best season. Like he became a solid starter, ironically for Philly, but he never hit those same numbers again. And that just kind of happens when you throw a goalie into the fire this quickly because they need the time to develop. Not everyone, and I'm going to use Carey Price for example. Adam's probably going to be able to kind of comment on this a lot better than I have, but I just remember when he was being called up that he didn't play in the 2006 season. You know, he played in the World Juniors 2 years after he was drafted, Carey Price, and they still limited his starts when he came to the NHL.
Right. It's a tricky situation. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, I could have done this. I would have done this. I would have done that. Like, I think we're lucky that we can view it with hindsight. So I'm not, it's difficult to say I would have done this. I would have done that. But looking at it now, maybe playing him 75% of the games last year or around that wasn't the best move. Maybe having a more yes, Brian Elliott is a good backup goalie, but maybe having someone who is more of a 1B type goalie would have been better for the team and for him. Like how old is Carter Hart? 21, 22,
22.
Like he's still young. He's 22 years old. And at the same time, I don't necessarily think everything is solely on goaltending here. There's clearly something missing. And we've talked about it before. Yesterday they sent Shane Gostisbehere on waivers. Wasn't claimed. I wonder what's happening. Maybe this has something to do with a move coming because again, they're one of the teams who were potentially in on adding a defenseman.
Yeah, and I think too, like Travis Konecny has also commented on it that they're playing. I can't use the word here, but they're not playing. They're playing like S word, and he mentioned that it looks worse on Carter Hart than it really is. It's kind of like the whole team as a unit that's really failing him. And again, like I think when you look at the Flyers from last year and the Flyers from this year, last year was more of a lightning in the bottle approach where, you're going to have the hot hand of a lot of your forwards, especially like a Sean Couturier. You're going to have a Carter Hart that comes up and, plays amazing for you into the playoffs. And I think they had that idea now, even when they've been struggling where they haven't been the same team, but they said, listen, like where was that from last year? And I think management is just trying to capitalize on that again, like I'm not saying this was probably why Ron Hextall got pushed out because, it's all speculation, but he wanted a bit of the slower approach. But I think the Flyers, especially for the core they have, for the age of the amount of money they've been given, that they're under pressure a lot to win. They're under a lot of pressure to make those deep runs again because, again, like they haven't made the finals since 2010.
Right. It's weird because I think now with last season, the way people view this team is very different. And rightfully so, right? Like they're a hell of a good team. So, I mean, I don't think this season really should say a lot to management. I think it says, well, wait a second here. Let's take a step back. Clearly we're missing something. That's what it should say. For me, that's what it says. I don't think it means, well, this guy's not good enough. This guy's not good enough. Well, no, take a step back here. Like they were a really good team last year. On paper, players individually worked really well. So clearly, what did they lose? Matt Niskanen. And we've had this discussion. Maybe he was of more importance than we thought he was when he retired. Like this team is good. I
It
don't think
is.
it's a matter
Yeah.
of if it's a good or, was last year an anomaly. I think this year is an anomaly.
Probably, yeah. I can kind of see it, and they've been the injuries here and there. There's been just kind of like a collective feel that we've seen with other teams that the morale isn't the same as it was before. That
Right.
they're not playing at a certain level. I think like there's certain exceptions. Like Scott Lawton has really kind of emerged.
Yeah.
You know, 9 years after he was drafted, that he's finally shown up. That there are those great stories with things, but it's again like it's a lot of like the guys getting paid. It's a lot of the big name guys that they're just having these off years.